Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for joining us last night, those of you who joined us, which is most of you, I think. First, thank you so much to the Ambassador and to Madam Ambassador, Libby. Thank you so much for opening your home, letting us use your chef. That's really kind of you. Such a wonderful place. I'm sure you'll miss it a little bit when you go. Obviously, I am from Politico. I'm the editor-in-chief of Politico in Europe. And today we are showing our German roots. We are not just Politico, we're Uber Politico today. Thank you to our sponsor, Uber, obviously. The Ambassador and I met when we both arrived almost exactly the same time. And I would like to call you my friend. We've known each other about 3 years, and we really bonded over a few things. Shared love of history. You're going to Bastogne in just a couple of days for the 80th anniversary of, and thanks to your recommendation, I watched all of Band of Brothers. So I'm now an expert in the Battle of the Bulge as well. But mainly the thing that really I felt connected to you about was your passion for media freedom, and your passion in particular for finding ways to fund journalism particularly as a way to shore up democracy, which I just found it so refreshing, and I found it so inspiring, frankly, that you were so committed to this as a topic. And when I came and asked you if you might do something with us for around our P28, you said, I'll do it, but only if we can talk about our favorite topic. So here we are, talk about our favorite topic. First of all, I thought I'd just ask you, since you were going to leave anyway, I know that, but now you're definitely leaving before January 20th, hard stop. I thought you might just be able to tell us a little bit your sort of reflections on your time here in the capital of Europe, representing the leader of the free world here in Brussels. Some of your reflections of your time here as ambassador.
Well, Jamil, thank you very much. And indeed, we are friends. We're very good friends. Little known story. The first week we were here, there was a very prominent Republican senator came who was an expert on the People's Republic of China, and he comes in my office and says, who should I talk to about that? I said, go have lunch with this guy. It just shows you how much confidence I have.
It's more than lunch. We had quite a few beers as well.
Yeah. But anyhow, you're a good friend, and we do share this passion for this subject. I also want to recognize John Harris, who is somewhere in the room here. I met him for the first time last night. I told Libby, my wife, who is right here, and I couldn't do any of this without Libby and our team here at the residence, that, I had never met John Harris. And Libby and I had lived in Washington for 50 years, and I had been in the middle of policy and politics for 50 years and never met John Harris. I said, what does that tell you? It says that I'm a nerd and a homebody. So I would like to just reflect a minute on, I've been in the region now 15 years. I actually trained as a lawyer, and that's what my area was. And all of a sudden, Barack Obama and Joe Biden said, I think we want you to be an ambassador. So that's how I ended up in Romania for 3 years, and now here for 3 years. But I've spent most of the last 15 years focusing on the issues of Central and Eastern Europe. And I have come to the conclusion that the most important issue that I could work on, unfortunately, is not the issue I worked on here, because Vladimir Putin had other ideas, but is the question of saving independent media. And I will talk in this panel about ideas that that Jamil and I have considered, but also my incredible public diplomacy team headed by Gavin Soonwall have been working on for 2 years now. And the events in Romania and elsewhere sort of reflect this. But a member of my staff handed me a quote this morning from Voltaire, which is a powerful quote that says, he can persuade you to believe absurdities, can persuade you to commit atrocities. And the only check on that, I believe, is independent media. Now, I was reflecting on this subject and what I learned in my 15 years, and I flashed back to a moment in 2012, which Libby will remember very well in Romania, which was a very similar moment when there was a constitutional crisis in Romania, and it looked like the whole pro-European structure was about to collapse. And I picked up the New York Times and read a really wonderful piece by Tom Friedman, in which he talked about a book, which if you haven't read, you should read, called Why Nations Fail. And it's a book written by two developmental economists at MIT, Darren Acemoglu and Jim Robertson, and his colleague Simon Johnson. And the basic thesis of this book is, if you look at democracies versus autocracies, the reason democracies work is because they provide a better quality of life for their citizens. And the reason they do that is because they have what these economists call empowering institutions that empower people and counter extractive elites. By that they mean crooks, basically, people that are stealing from the people. Now, what's full circle, the reason I mention this is because last month these two economists got the Nobel Prize for Economics, which is very significant, I think. And I think that I thought about this after the fact. The president-elect called me and, 2 weeks after the election and said, Mark, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be ambassador to the European Union. And Joe Biden, in his inimicable way, said, really? And I didn't tell him this story, but I said, look, the European Union, the magic of the European Union is through the accession process and through the process of conditionality of funding. They are the best multilateral institution in the world in building democracies and building these institutions, okay? Now, the problem that I see right now, and the reason that I hope we'll talk about this today, I'm sure we will, is that we've got to convince the European Union that as important it is to worry about rule of law and anti-corruption and transparency and free markets and good highways and good budgets, is that they've got to decide that the fourth estate is as important part of that infrastructure as anything else. And if they don't protect it, democracy is going to fail. And it's already struggling in 5 member states. They'll go nameless, you know who they are, where there's serious backsliding going on. In every case, independent media is at risk. So I hope that's my main lesson from my 15 years, and that's what I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to, is working on this question. And I hope that this panel may be a stepping off point for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you and I have discussed it quite a lot, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, but before I moved to Brussels 3 years ago, I was based in Hong Kong. And I was a journalist in Hong Kong, and what I witnessed there really taught me that democracy is so, so fragile. And it also really made totally clear to me that if you're a smart dictator or a smart autocrat or aspiring one, the first thing you do is go after the free press. And there are friends of mine, several friends of mine, including the former proprietor of the Apple Daily newspaper, Jimmy Lai, is on trial right now. And he will spend almost certainly the rest of his life in prison, merely for owning a newspaper that advocated for peaceful transition to democracy. So I know how important it is to you, and it's equally important to me. I wanted to talk about Politico very quickly because...
advertisement, right?
Yeah, always. So you mentioned to me just before that you had a couple of pieces that you read recently that you were really... that you really liked, that you felt you couldn't get anywhere else. So just tell us what those were.
Well, this is going to be a classic Joe Biden, what he calls a slap and pat, okay? I'm going to give very positive stuff, but I have some concerns too I want to raise. I should have warned you, I suppose. 2 great articles, which are the best of Politico, I think, is one article that's probably 6 weeks, 2 months old, right after the Draghi report came out, where you did a really good piece on all of the metrics that demonstrate why Draghi wrote the report and why Romanians are so upset. I mean, Romanians, but also Europeans are so upset when they compare themselves to the United States. And it's a very interesting piece, taking the metrics of GDP per capita, productivity, et cetera, in the United States, comparing it to Europe, and say this problem has to be fixed. The other great article, very similar article, but very similar data, is 7 reasons why Romanians hate their government. And they are good reasons, okay? It's very similar data on healthcare, on education, you know, just the numbers of what's happening in Romania. Now, a lot of it is TikTok. We can talk about that offline if you want. But a lot of it is because people are angry, and they have a reason for being angry, and you guys uncovered that, and I think that's great. The concern I have about...
Give me the slap.
Yeah, okay, the slap is a very easy slap. I've said this to you before. I wish Politico was spending more time on these backsliding countries. I wish you had people in those countries, because I'll tell you what the problem is if you're in, you know, look, the ultimate solution is what we're going to talk about today, finding ways to get equity investment into platforms so they can support themselves. But the most independent news people in the world are people that work for Politico or Agence France-Presse or New York Times or the Financial Times, who have their own people, because no one can get to them. No one can get to your guys. If you don't have people in the field, though, you're not going to report on it. And I just, not the purpose.
My CEO's here, so I can, right after this.
I said, by the way,
I can put a request for more stuffing right after this. What about, stay with Romania for a minute, because it is, I know how important it is to you. So tell us a little bit about what you see going on there and what you think maybe even potentially the solution might be to the problem.
Well, look, in the end, I think TikTok, what happened with TikTok is really bad, okay? And actually there is a remedy for TikTok, and the European Union has it in the Digital Services Act, and they are going to investigate it. They've made it very clear, and I think that's great. I'm here to help, if you know what I mean. I've got some ideas of what they should look at, and I will be talking to them. But in the end, the governing parties of Romania have to address the concerns of the Romanian people. And one thing that people don't get is actually the president of Romania has very little to do with domestic policy, but that person is going to pay the price. That person appoints the prime minister. So we'll see what happens in the upcoming elections. I am not terribly, I was very ambivalent about canceling the election. I think they probably had to do it. I think they could have done it earlier, the Constitutional Court. But in the end, they're going to have another election. They need to have monitors at that election. And I think Politico and others should be advocating the OSCE send monitors and observers to that election. I think that's part of the problem. That'll get us 1/10 of the way there. So.
I know you have some concrete thoughts about how we can support, create, help foster, build independent media in Europe in particular, but I guess it applies everywhere. So maybe some specific ideas that you have.
Look, you and I have talked about this. The problem with independent media, or media generally, both in the European Union and in Europe and in the United States, is the business model of Axel Springer's obviously begun to break the code. But it's a market failure, okay? The business model is not functioning, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, where you have embattled news publications. And we spent, through the work of Fanny and others, we did all of these conferences, and we can give you the records on all the new innovative stuff that's being done on business models. But the problem with business models, and there are many new ideas on how to save media in the U.S. and in the EU, you've got to have equity funding. This is not going to be solved by George Soros or Samantha Powers writing checks, okay? That's a part of the solution, but in the long run, these publications have to be run like businesses. They have to address a demographic that wants to get the truth, and then they have to make it work, okay? So how's that going to happen? I think to attract equity investment, and you'll hear more about Pluralis and the work that Thomas Layson and Patrice Schneider have been doing on that, that's wonderful. But they all tell me the same thing. This is like the failure, this is like what we did with electric vehicles. It's a market failure. We would not have electric vehicles without a tax credit, okay? I think Elon Musk understands that, okay? That being the case, we need to address the market failures like we did with electric vehicles. We need to do the same thing with newspapers. Now, this is not a handout. This is a sense of doing for these investors, giving them the risk mitigating factors and protection they need to put money in safely in these companies and make them work and deliver for their readers. Wow. And this is what we're talking about with the European Union. We're trying to come up with 5 or 6 ideas. By the way, if people want to get more details on this, Jourova and I posted a web blog today that I think you guys referred to, and Politico did this morning. Go to that. There are actually a number of specific ideas in there, which people want, or you want. I can give you more in detail on that. So,
yeah. Well, I look forward to talking more about tax breaks for Politico. So. We're totally behind you. So, what do you plan to do next?
Well,
after January 17th?
The first thing I'm going to do is Libby and I are going to go see our kids and our grandkids. Fortunately, my son is here, so he'll get 2 visits. He's been, by the way, my son has been here more than any other kid in my family, so he likes Brussels. Maybe he'll move in this house. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And then, look, I'm 78. I want to spend more time with my children and my grandchildren, but I am going to devote the rest of my life to this issue that we're talking about today. And I want to create a beachhead. I was telling Thomas Layson this a few minutes ago. I want to create a beachhead in the United States where the smartest people in finance and journalism get together and build a case in the United States that the U.S. needs to care about this, about what's happening in Europe. If you want to know what will save the transatlantic relationship, that will, if the U.S. continues at every level to continue to invest their personal capital and their actual capital in what's happening in Europe. And why is that important? Because if media dies in Europe and democracy dies in Europe, it's going to die in the United States too. And the news ecosystem, as Politico knows better than anybody, is transatlantic. It's a U.S. You have the largest newsroom in Brussels. I know you know that, but I bet you people in this room don't know that. And it just shows you there's a demographic for it. But you've got to help us solve this problem in the backsliding countries too. I know. I talked to your owner last night about it. So.
Good. You're going right to the top to get us more funnier. Yeah. Oh, I love you, ambassadors. Okay. I know you want to. You wanted to thank some people.
Oh yes.
You want to
yes.
Go ahead and do that. Since
let's see, Marie Fernay and Daniel Braun and Alvaro de Elena from Vera Jourova's cabinet. They worked closely with Fanny and Gavin and the rest of us in doing our various conferences. Anna Harold of DG Connect, Jeff Lightfoot from CIPE, Roslan Stefanano from the CSD, which has been very, very helpful in giving us ideas. Of course, Patrice Schneider from Pluralis, Thomas Layson from Media Hub, who actually gave me the idea to get involved in this, and my whole public diplomacy team. They all know who they are, but they should raise their hands, by the way, so you can know who and I want to thank you for all. And we're not done yet, right?
We're not done. That's right. Yes. So we're going to stay around. You should stay around. We've got drinks and food and whatever. Yeah. And the ambassador and I would love to talk to any of you. If you have any questions, we're not going to do formal questions from the floor, but if you have any questions about this topic in particular and you would like to chat with the ambassador or myself and my colleagues, we'll just be standing around. And please come up and ask questions, give us ideas. We're going to save democracy and save the media. I'd like to thank our team at Politico for making this and last night happen. Brilliant job, and thank you all very much. And thanks again. Thank you, Libby. Most importantly, thank you.
Oh, and thanks to Libby and the whole residence team.
And the residence team. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, thank you.